Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Flipping the Barrel podcast, the podcast where we interview energy leaders to find out more about their career and life journeys. I can't believe we've been doing Flipping the Barrel for almost 5 years this September, and we just can't thank you enough for the support over the years, for sharing any episode that you liked, and just listening to the podcast. So, again, thank you for almost 5 years. Today, we have the pleasure of interviewing and finally getting to know Karma SlusArchuk. I'm sorry if I butchered the last name. And she is the account director of the Eastern Hemisphere at Parker Wellbore. She's instrumental in Parker's regional business growth, and she has over 23 years of industry experience. And she's got a background in drilling, engineering, optimization, process automation, and implementation of new technology. Karma has sharpened her soft skills as well as has become a strong business development individual. I actually got the chance to meet Karma at OTC, and she is exceptional at what she does and just such a connector. She is a chemical engineer by degree from the University of Tulsa in Oklahoma. And Karma has had roles at Exxon, Shell, Transocean, and Whitehorse Technologies, which she was a founder of. And you'll hear all about that. And this has all prepared her to be the leader that she is today in her current position. So Karma is joining us from Dubai today live. And so thank you so much for saying yes and for connecting with us online. And just we're excited to bring your story to life.
Thank you so much, Jamie and Massiel, for having me. It's a pleasure. I have been following you guys for a while. And at the beginning, to be honest, I thought, what is all this about? But then I see the positive impact that you have created in our industry towards females. So I'm very excited to share a little bit of my background with everyone. So thank you.
Thank you, Karma. And I have to admit that when Massiel had told me about meeting you, like she'd mentioned in the opening, I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to meet Karma and hear about her story. And when we say you're a connector, you really are. Every time we have met, we can talk for hours. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for the life and opportunities that you bring to the energy space and just that motivation. So I really want to take everyone back to the very beginning because you have a very interesting backstory, which to even think today you're calling in from Dubai. Really, if you just reflect on that, it's really incredible because Karma, you grew up in Ecuador in a small town, and your dad was an American who was stationed in Ecuador. And this is how your parents met. So the story is definitely one of those where it's like once in a lifetime opportunity, and your parents fall in love, which is such an incredible story. But then once you were born, you had a few years with your dad, and then he had to leave Ecuador and go back to America. And there was kind of this pact that your parents had together. Maybe at some point you were going to meet with your dad again. But you and your dad stay connected. So y'all wrote letters to each other and you heard from him. So it wasn't like he wasn't present, like he was still there, but just not there physically. When I heard the story from you, it really interested me in like, how did you deal with that growing up with no dad, but knowing that he was still there and still around, and you really can only communicate with him through letters. And also just the difference of you living in the small town in Ecuador and then he's in America. So just very different dynamics. How did that shape you into kind of where you're at today? But also, how did it impact your childhood?
So I think you're a great listener. As we share a little bit of my background, so certainly my childhood foundation are deeply rooted, and and as you mentioned, it's part of two cultures, right? But there was circumstances that shaped me into who I am today, and I would like to just walk you through. Ecuador is a very Christian rooted country, so faith was one of the foundations of who I am. Respect for others. Just to give you an example, we all learn this in school, right? Doesn't matter what country you're from. But this is special because I was taught to greet everyone. So imagine at my bus stop, my school bus stop, there was about 50 houses before I could get to my own house. So I had to greet every adult that I saw on the way there. So I think that actually have helped me to shape my social skills. So I'm just walking you through to like things that were significant in my career, in my life when I think about right appreciation for nature. Ecuador is a beautiful country. There was a book that I read many years ago that when God created the world, He just really, everything that was left over, He dumped it and He says Ecuador. So I have an opportunity to enjoy simple things with life, just going with friends to the beach every day and things like that. So education was a priority in my family. It was a must. This was non-negotiable since I can ever remember. Uh, they told me my mother and my grandmother play a big role in my early childhood. They say we support you now. You get a degree and you support yourself. That was as simple as that. There was no why, how. You just have to study. Um, Work ethics, always doing the best to my knowledge. Also here, a mix of cultures. Americans work as soon as they can. You babysit, you cut the lawn, you wash your parents' cars, and you get paid. We don't do that in South America. So finances, it was early introduced once I moved towards the American side. So I can say that I really took advantage of both worlds. Ecuador, Esmeraldas, like Maciel says, is a small city in the coast, um, really third world country. But and U.S. I moved to North Carolina with my dad, and it was a huge opportunity for me to grow and develop and see wealth, right, and the culture.
Thank you for sharing. And just what a beautiful story of just your childhood or even your parents meeting. But I think what was very unique about your story was, like Jamie mentioned, your father left early on in your life and you never saw him again until you were 15 years old. And this was actually a pact that your parents did when he left. And basically, it was like, I'm going to take care of our daughter till she turns 15. But the day she turns 15, it's going to be your responsibility. And I'm going to get her on a plane and she's going to move to the US with you. And they agreed on that. And incredibly, 15 years later, that actually happened, which I think maybe some families can talk about it of like, we made this pact, but 15 years later, they actually made it happen. And I think what was interesting when you told us the story is your mom, brought you to Quito, which is the capital of Ecuador, and dropped you off at the airport, and just you got on a plane and left without necessarily knowing when you were going to come back. When are you going to see your mom again, and everything you've ever known in your life, your surroundings, your people. Now you're going to be going to this new country with a dad that you kind of know, but not really, with his new family, which, by the way, he got remarried and had kids. And so I just think it's such we can make a movie out of like even your story at the beginning. But I think what was shocking to me was when you mentioned that your mom didn't even shed a tear and was just like, dropped you off, you get on a plane, you leave. But then you had a conversation with her later and you were like, you were on the plane thinking like, my mom didn't even like, did she care that I was leaving? So I want you to tell us a little bit about that conversation you had with her afterwards, about that feeling of she just dropped you off.
Absolutely. So just to kick it off, Maciel, you're right. There was serious commitment from both parts that they will get this child educated, and that one parent was responsible to a certain age and the other one to the next stage of life. But also just to encourage, it was a female decision, right? It was my mother's decision. That's what she actually there was some sort of negotiations. Does he takes her to the US now, and she hold back and she says no, let me have her for this period of time and then I will turn her back to you, which I think it was very critical. And you can go could have gone either way, but she thought at that point that she had some values to to contribute, and therefore she held me back and released me, like if you say it's at a certain time. And yes, so the story is exactly how you describe it, Maciel. uh, we knew my 15 years birthday happened, big celebration in Latin America, big deal, quinceañera. And then after a few days, she says, okay, I was ready to go to the US. And we traveled to Quito by bus and overnight. And then the next day we went to the airport and she just put my luggage down and says, you need to get on that plane and I will call you soon. And I was just shocked. No hug, no, I'm gonna miss you, just good luck. Very in our culture, because Latin parents are very protective, especially her when she has raised me mainly by herself, right? Even my dad was very, I don't know how they did it. There was no WhatsApp, no Facebook, none of this stuff, And they managed pictures, telegrams, and I mean, he was present in my life virtually, if you will say. So it took a while. It was an adjustment. So this is teenagers' years, and you know how crucial it is in any person's life. And when I see and I hear and I experience, it's like, man, I could be totally messed up. And it wasn't easy. Then I landed to a family that is well established, and I feel again just felt unwanted from one side from my mother, and then now I feel unwanted because I am disrupting something, a household, and also I'm not allowed to speak my language, which it turned out to be to my benefit, but absolutely very difficult, but I made the best out of that. um, Quickly I learned English. I think all these events helped me to figure out what I was to do. Um, my mother called me like a month later, and she says, "Oh, hello," and she's crying in tears on the phone. And I said, "Well, what's happening to me?" I'm like, "Okay, I don't understand you. You dropped me off." And she says, "If I had not done it this way, you wouldn't be there. You have to see it for yourself to know that there was a better opportunity for you." So this encouraged me. Within 3 months, I learned English. I passed the TOEFL test, which is English as a second language exam. I passed the SAT. So I was on a roll to what I needed to do. I needed to proceed with my education. So my father, he met his commitment. He worked for Duke University for many years. So when it was time to go to college, he says, "You're ready, or your college is paid for." So I think I go back to that commitment and agreement. Somehow my mother decided to propose, and so it worked.
I just think that your parents had thought this through in a way that I think as children we never really realized like what's going on. And your mom was so cognizant of like what she was doing, even though at the time it seemed like out of this world crazy. But it's so right. Like if she would have been crying and trying to get you on the plane, it would have been a complete disaster. And she knew that if you could go and see what America could give you, that the opportunity was going to be huge for you. Before we kind of get into where you went with college and how that really did transpire into a great opportunity, I want to look back at one moment in your life because this wasn't the only kind of turning point for you. Because when you were living with your dad, with his new wife, and new family, they ended up getting a divorce. So now you're now in stage 2 of, okay, now I'm in this new family. Now they're divorcing. And then you started feeling like, okay, I just need to get back to my home country. I don't feel comfortable here right now. I need to have some sort of transition. And what I thought was really amazing, and I think maybe too, because when we met, I think I had just gotten back from an all-inclusive resort in Cancun. You had mentioned that you found a 5-star resort close to your hometown where you decided to work and apply to. And for me, that was so interesting to hear because I just met all these people that were at a resort working, right? And I thought, like, what an incredible opportunity. And you talked about kind of the opportunity that you have when you work at these resorts. And not to mention, this is where you met your husband. Can you talk to us a little bit about the support of those resorts in those countries and like the support that they give the locals for working there? I thought that was really interesting, as well as how that was when you met your husband while a quick little, hey, we need you to work the front desk, which was not even a position that you were in. You ended up meeting who you ended up marrying.
So yes, I went back to Ecuador, which I was scared because I thought, okay, now they're getting divorced, and there was a lot of arguing. So you need to, my dad, once again, protecting me, says, why don't you move away, out of the way for a little bit, and then you will be back. So I went back to Esmeraldas and I couldn't find myself there. There was nothing to do. It's a beach town, right? So everybody had moved on. My classmates had gone to college and they were doing some married. So I went back to Quito and with some friends, I thought I need to work because remember what I told you originally? That's what Americans do. In Latin America, we don't work until after you're married or graduate from college. But I thought I gotta work. My mother thought I was something was wrong with me, and I said, no, I have to work. I have to do something. So I went back, and one of the things that was very competitive and it was huge for me is that I spoke English. That was what it got me into this five-star hotel because everybody in that hotel had to be educated, had to have a tourism degree, and I didn't have any of that. I just have this English and certificates that I could speak and read English. So, long story short, yeah, there was a lot of privilege working for that, and that was probably my first real job. And then, consequently, I did I was very good at my work. So, my manager decided to test me out and put me on the front desk only one time, and that one time is when I met my husband. He was coming through the front desk to work in the oil and gas, going to the jungle of Ecuador. And it turns out that it was my first day at the front desk, very late at night, and I didn't know what to do. So by mistake, I gave him the penthouse, the only room that is available on the computer. So maybe he saw that as a hint, but not really. It was a mistake. And then then he went off his way. I went off my way, but he returned a few weeks later looking for me, and my team told him she went back to the States. She was actually here just working for a while. So this was the period almost of 1 year that I was in Ecuador. So can you imagine that one time that I'm on the front desk, I meet this my future husband.
That is, again, part like a movie needs to be made out of this because it's just so bittersweet and just how things work out in life sometimes. So, to your point, you went back to the US after a year, and you somehow Andy found you, or you guys stayed connected somehow because you got engaged afterwards. And the only ask from your dad, however, was you have to go to college. Again, education being a big pillar in your life. And so you ended up going to the University of Tulsa, and then about a year and a half into just your degree, you're going to be with Andy. He was still working oil field, kind of traveling back and forth. You guys were placed in Oklahoma. There was an advisor that came to you and was like, hey, I think you're in the wrong profession, like in the wrong degree. You're really good in math and chemistry. I really think you should go into something towards engineering. Um, how did you listen to this advisor to really make that big life-changing decisions? Because that we've all sat down with advisors and sometimes they get it right, sometimes they don't, but you actually leaned into it and you thought, you know what, I should change. And you did. And you became a chemical engineer and your entire career has been around engineering. So tell us a little bit about just that situation of when he sat you down and told you should look into engineering.
Yeah, so I believe they noticed me immediately as soon as I arrived to the school. Because one thing, it was chemistry class. There was a list of equipment that I needed to put all together, but I couldn't find what a beaker was. So immediately the professors pick up that there was some gaps that needed to be closed. And throughout that, they were looking at my grades. And I was excelling in chemistry and math, but I was having a very hard time in biology. And one of the reasons is even if I spoke English, the amount of reading is a lot more. So they knew there was some delay and some issues. So one day I just get a note saying from my advisor, and I know it's from the feedback from the regular teachers that I have. And then he says, I would like to see you. And I think you need to move, you need to change careers. So this was very troublesome for me because my dad is in the medical field and I wanted to be just like him. And I have chosen to go to a smaller school, no, where he worked in Duke, because I knew that I needed more attention. I knew that I needed to have to go somebody and ask questions. So they explained to me there is a different path for you. This you're taking the harder and the one that is not for you. And they pretty much sat down and said, I remember exactly the words. You can be the best student. You can work as hard as you want. We know you're going to accomplish the grades, but you're also a female and that is already married. And the chances that you will be able to compete with your language and medical school will be very hard. So we see that what you see yourself as a doctor might not happen because of the events that are going to happen in your life, and you might get to be a mom. That just it was like somebody play out things that you don't see normally. So I consider, and I said that my first question was, I want to honor my father's work. He paid for 4 years of my college, and I don't want absolutely nothing or nobody else's money involved in this. I need to honor this. And they said, okay, we'll make you a schedule. We're moving you to engineering. And I thought, oh, perfect, engineering. And I might be just an engineer, as known in Latin America. And they say, no, 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 no. You're going to be a chemical engineer. And my first question was like, what do chemical engineers do? Do they work in a lab? And they say no. And I remember the examples. They are like, you can work in bath and body work. You can make perfumes. You can make chocolates. Work for M&M. They never mention oil and gas, by the way, but they put it out there as a world of possibilities for me. So I did go into engineering. They facilitated a schedule where I graduated after 4 years. I graduated with honors. And I was a huge impact for the university itself. I ran for president of the university student body. I was president of the chemical engineering students. I took my team to many competitions. So I cannot imagine what would I be or what will I be doing if I haven't taken that advice. In addition to financial freedom, because as you know, to become a doctor, it takes a little while. So before you see your first paycheck. In addition, Tulsa University, has a huge number of international students, as many universities in the U.S., I'm sure, but also very around energy, oil and gas. They have a huge petroleum engineering department. So we all kind of network with each other throughout that portion.
So, Karma, you said something pretty interesting because when the advisor was telling you about what you could do with chemical engineering, they didn't mention oil and gas. However, ExxonMobil came to campus and you got a job straight out of college as a drilling engineer, which was probably not something that was mentioned to you, when they first initially said, hey, you should be a chemical engineer. Here are your classes. Tell us about what that was like for you, because you started in West Texas and then they sent you over to Chad for a few years and then you went to Russia. And you didn't just become a drilling engineer. You became, I would say, probably obviously one of the best in the group, because they decided to move you international. So what was your first experience when you even found out, okay, I could work at Exxon, and what's this drilling engineer thing? And then the next step to that is, how did you make yourself visible where you were getting these really incredible opportunities?
So, like you say, it's all about opportunities and taking them at the right time. So I knew that the first assignment that was kind of controversial or hard was Chad. It's a landlocked country, not very secure or not as safe as other countries at that point. And I knew that the job was being offered to few. There was 23 engineers when we started at ExxonMobil, so we were very competitive. And I knew people were turning it down, but I knew the consequences of turning a job down when your boss walks and makes you this wonderful offer. So when they come to me, probably I was number 6 to make when they approach. I just put my hand on the table and I said, "Where are my tickets?" They were shocked, and I knew I early. And nobody told me that I knew I was in a male-driven industry, but I also thought that I have friends everywhere and we're gonna be nice to each other. But really, there is competition out there. So I thought I gotta be equal. I gotta compete. I gotta do this. So I took it. and I traveled to Chad. But one important thing in our life is trust. It was difficult, but I trusted Exxon. I mean, they are known for taking the right measurements for safety. So I trusted, and my only focus was that I have to do my job with the work ethics that my parents have taught me. I had to do it, and I had to do it well because I have to succeed. It doesn't matter where I am, I have to succeed at what they have assigned me. So I was a completions engineer. And when you talk about visibility, amazing, this broad visibility. Imagine when so many people have turned down this project, and this lady from Ecuador took it and she just ran with it. Well, now we need to keep an eye on her, because what if? So probably every hitch while I was in Chad, I got a call from senior level management from Exxon. So the vice president, the president of Exxon asking me, so Karma, how are you doing? I knew they were not calling me to ask me about operations. I was like on the bottom of the chain. They could see operations through the report. They were really kind of wondering why I have taken this job. So I think they saw grit and determination. They knew there was, unless I messed up, they could take me out. Otherwise, I was staying there until they gave me the next assignment. So that brought me that visibility, and working as a team. Remember, in most of remote locations, I was the only woman as well. But being able to build that comfort and trust within my peers, where they also feel comfortable to have a woman working and that they trust the decisions that I was making. So then one of the calls that I got was like, okay, we got it. We believe in you. We know you can do this job. So we need to get you out of there. So they say, here's your choices. And over the phone, which you think corporations like this don't make decisions like that, they did. It worked for me. So they say, do you want to go Venezuela or Sakhalin? And my only question, and believe me, I don't know where this come from. I was not that experienced, right? I thought, how long is the project for Venezuela? And they say 5 to 10 years. How long is the project for Sakhalin? And Russia, and they say 30 years. And I say, I'll go to Sakhalin. And they asked me the same thing. If Venezuela is easier, you speak Spanish. Why are you taking this? And I said, because it's different. Again, I moved to another remote location where I have to tell you, it gave me engineering opportunities. They gave me the freedom to be who I am. They gave me the freedom to contribute openly, participate, and I have to tell you the biggest thing in our industry, which I hope continues to hold, is that trust and respect. You can get anything from anybody to do it right if you keep those things together.
I remember when you told us about just all the big international moves that you did to very remote areas where I'm sure, 10 plus years ago, it was not easy being a woman, to your point, being the only one, not speaking Russian, or just being different in a way, but you made it work, and just through your grit, etc., is how you became memorable in Exxon. But after about 8-ish years working there, and by the way, just to mention, your husband, Andy, was also still working in oil and gas, traveling all over the world. He was in like other countries while you were in Russia, while you were in Chad, and you guys somehow made it work through long distance because you were both on hitches the entire time. Tell me a little bit. The question we want to get into is starting a family, which is that pivotal point in a lot of couples, career, but mainly the woman that takes this hit in a way when things don't work out as planned, when you're trying to have a family. So you told us, after 8 years of Exxon, you actually followed a really good manager of yours that went over to Shell. They brought you over. You were having a great time at Shell as well. But again, you were starting to try a family. Things got a little bit complicated. There's a lot of stress at the time during the jobs, etc. And you unfortunately had a miscarriage pretty long into your pregnancy, which was, very difficult to take. And even going back to work when all of these things are happening. And I'm sure back then miscarriages weren't as openly talked about as maybe they are today, even though we still have to work on talking more about those things. But a year later, you were able to finally have a child again, and you were very happy in that moment of being able to just be a mother. And this is when you made a big decision of taking a year off and just quitting your job because you felt like you wanted to be home and you wanted to advocate for yourself, and you didn't want this to happen again to you and have a miscarriage, maybe due to stress and just the work, etc. So you quit your job. You quit your like 10 plus year career at that point to focus on your family. Can you tell us a little bit about just that decision making and how companies should be supporting women nowadays when they want to take these big decisions? And obviously didn't stop you career wise. You're still in an amazing place today. But I'm sure at the time when you're quitting your job to focus on your family, I'm sure there's a lot of doubt on, will I ever continue my career and be successful?
So it was a hard decision, but I was happy I took a year off just to decompress and reorganize um, my life, because motherhood is no easy. I tease a lot, but I say it's easy to drill oil wells in cycling without sleep than raising children, because mine didn't sleep until they were 5, I think, each one of them. So um, one thing that I will tell you is it was how can they be better prepared, both sides, right, corporate wise and the person who is trying to follow, to become a mom. For me, I tell you that you do need to network and look for a support group. It would be better, because I know I miss things, professional, or let's say packages, right? Because I make an abrupt decision that I was going home, that I was going to stay home. So I lost some of my, you're right, if I had known, can I take a year leave? And can I come back? These things were not spoken. As you say, maybe nowadays, yes, you can sit down and talk. For me, my career was very operational oriented. I'm talking about what we're doing in operations, and how we're handling and AFEs and things like that in technology. So I think I wasn't focusing on myself. After years, I learned actually from great people, that you guys have had as a guest. Kim McHugh, I have a lot of respect for her. She has spoken lots of knowledge into my life and saying you have to take care of yourself to be able to be your best. So no knowing and not having this mentorship, I think, created a gap. So please, if you're a woman trying to do this, and you want to stay in the industry, get some advice before you do it. No, don't regret the time at home with the kids, when I had the children, but you have to do planning. Number one, there's no planning whatsoever with me. Second is you have to keep your network, because even if I went home to take a year off, 3 months later, I have colleagues in the industry asking me if I would take jobs as a consultant, which I didn't even know that was possible, right? So they keep you, this is important to have your proper planning, communication with the people that can provide the right information, and keep your network, because you're going to need it if you decide to come back or not. Also, before you become a mom, I would suggest that you have field experience, especially in the energy industry. Because once you're a mom, you're more limited about how much time. You can't go on a 35, 5 weeks on, 1 week off if it's necessary. So you have to get your knowledge as soon as you can, as fast as you can. And also probably find your niche. What are your expertise, right? Find something like that. And in addition, I was lucky enough that I could just say, okay, I'm going home with my baby for a year, because my husband was working, as you mentioned. So try to plan a little bit of how the financial will go, because staying at home and having financial issues, it might not be the right setup for you, right? Um, and also, I will say plan your grand return. So while you're taking your time off, I think it's important for us to continue to stay connected, sharp, educate yourself. Those kids, sometimes they sleep. And one of the biggest things for me returning to the corporate world was, the first thought in my mind. I see all this new generation coming now. Remember, we talked about me not having Facebook when I was growing up in Ecuador, but now these kids can do everything on the phone, right? I was thinking immediately software I got behind in a year, so I'm gonna be competing with this type of people. So I had to do the grand entrance. I had to find a place where I will step in and bring value in.
One of my most favorite points you just made was that grand entrance part, because I feel like we also forget about ourselves during that process. So I think it's really important that you're like, hey, I this is what I'm doing. This is what I did to also educate myself while maybe I was on leave, or things I thought about, and taking that time to kind of have those moments, because you finally have just a little bit. I wouldn't say you have a break, because you never have a break with kids, but you get a little bit of like, okay, what do I want out of my life? And like, what am I passionate about? And it's a good time to reflect on that. To close, we wanted to ask you something. I mean, you're very culturally diverse. You've been all around the world. You are now the director of the Eastern Hemisphere for Parker Wellbore, and you're based in Dubai, which there's a lot of misconceptions about the Middle East, especially around women in the workplace. Still to today, I think there's a lot of like, just people still think it's like the olden days where you can't talk, you don't have any rights, and things are definitely changing. And I know Massiel just took a trip there, and she felt like people were so welcoming, and they even have a lot of marketing around how they're changing the way that they do things. Can you tell us about your experience, and how you have felt being a woman working in that area, working in Dubai, and kind of the misconceptions of the Middle East, and maybe what you've seen change?
So I am I'm gonna go back to few words that are gonna be repetitive through have been repetitive through our conversation. Trust, network, respect. This time, multicultural respect. Those all have been playing. It's like puzzle in my life, right? So coming to reside in the Middle East have been an amazing experience. First, because Parker Wellbore leadership trusted that a woman, or I'm not going to say a woman or a female, but that I'm qualified individual, and I could get this job done. Right? That's what they moved me, not just me and my family, to do this job. So I think the amount of trust that they put on me is huge, and it shows. The respect to their culture, desire to connect. You have to be able to desire to connect with them genuinely, because that will open doors for you. That's the network. It is not about, and this is the multicultural part, right? It's about knowing what is important to the people in the country that you're in. What is respect means to them, because it means different to all of us. And there is, like in every country in the world, there in the GCC countries, there is people that are more conservative than others. And a good example is I heard people says, well, they don't treat women well. I have no experience that, honestly, and I interact with a lot of people at different levels, right? From top management CEOs to people that work in our facilities, right? So they all treat me the same way, with respect. But sometimes it's also a misconception, because you think men are treating women in a different way, but also maybe women that don't want to be treated that way. So a good example is the handshake, right? That we all have to learn. In America, we handshake. In Latin America, we kiss. Uh, Here, I was talking to. So I learned that I will wait for them to extend their hand for me to shake their hand, and it's not because my hand is not as good as a male hand. It is because maybe some of their ladies and their culture do not like to have their hand shaken. And that's what I have learned now through actually talking to another great female colleagues. And they say, yes, it's very interesting when they say they extend their hand, a male extend their hand to a female, a local female, and they just accept that they don't want to shake it, but then they go and tap our shoulders. And they say the whole point is we don't want to be touched. So there is, like I told you, is a great experience, but for me, it has been a pleasant challenge, because as a Latina, which we're very affectionate people, in a very competitive industry as energy industry, and being able to be trusted to go and communicate with leaders on the future of their projects, and to be very observant about what is important to them so you can fit in. It's just like in the old days, you show up at the rig, you did the wrong thing, they send you back. So it's pretty similar at a different level.
You know, what really got me, Karma, was when you said about like in Latin America and other countries, like they do the kiss. And I swear every time I go to Italy, I'm like, which cheek? How many times? What do I do? Like I've almost kissed people on the lips before because we turn at different times. Like just being like culturally aware. And I love, you know, what you brought to the podcast today. And more importantly, your entire journey. When Maciel and I first heard it, it's just so incredible to think of like you, this young girl in Ecuador, you know, being growing up there till you were 15 and then moving to America, all because of a pact that your parents had made, going to live with your father, who you really didn't know, but kind of knew through letters and engagements of that sort. And then getting the opportunity to go to a great university and get your degree through an advisor that told you, hey, you should go into engineering, to this extensive career traveling the world as an engineer, working for multiple operators and now for Parker. It's really incredible to look back and think about where you're at today. And then also us being able to have this conversation from you in Dubai, you know, in the role that you're in today. It inspires us. And we're just so glad we could share your story today on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Jamie and Maciel. I just, you guys are amazing, and I hope that the words that I have spoken today, it helps to motivate a lot of other females. Uh, Remember the visibility part. Each one of us represent each other. So we will only go as high as we can if we all do what we know how to do and we do it well.
Thank you so much, Karma. And we really appreciate once again you coming on and sharing that story and being so vulnerable with us. And for our listeners today, if you enjoyed this episode, you'd like to help and support the podcast, please subscribe, leave us a rating, a review, and to stay up to date with us, you can follow us on Instagram, Flipping the Barrel, and then our LinkedIn at Flipping the Barrel. So we will catch you on the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.